SEO, and we're launching a kind of weekly Q&A show in the next couple of weeks called Local SEO Guide Show. Go to our website at LocalSEOGuide, and you can sign up for it. There you go. Take it away.
And Mike, Mr. Blumenthal.
So I am a bon vivant these days. I do a little bit of everything. I'm the Chief Delegation Officer at GatherUp, which is a very enjoyable position. I work with Joy at SterlingSky on the local use stuff and other gigs. I do keep my individual local consulting practice sort of going. About 20% of my time is spent on consulting with clients, and I periodically do pro bono work for really small businesses just to understand what it's like to remind myself how hard it is for them and to keep my sort of experience in that field fresh. So, but mostly just a bon vivant.
Yes, I wish I could say that about myself, but anyway, so just a reminder for everybody, you can ask questions at any time in the chat window, and we will try and get to as many of your questions as we can. So let me ask you guys, just what is the most common local SEO question that you hear, and what is the answer to it? And I don't need to call on people. We're not in class, so just blurt it out.
Boy,
well, in the last few weeks, I want to say it's been the geotagging help ranking on Google Maps, which is something we, Mike's laughing, something we get on almost every single webinar. So the answer would be no. In our
geotagging photos.
Yes, so like people have these sophisticated tools that allow them to add like metadata to photos and upload that to a Google My Business listing, and that's supposed to somehow help your ranking in the local pack. Joel Headley, who is one of the faculty members at LocalU, who used to work for Google for 10 years, kind of has come out and say like Google does not look at that stuff. Not to mention they already geotag a photo once you upload it to a place because they know it's attached to that place. So for whatever reason, it's one of those things that has not died as a practice yet. We still get it as a question a lot.
I get a couple of questions. One is, are you going to record this webinar these days? I get that a lot.
That's not a legitimate local SEO question.
It seems to come from local SEOs, but they ask it all the time. The answer is categorically yes. The other one I get, because I'm in the review space a lot, is how do I get rid of these fake reviews or these these reviews that I didn't deserve? And with Google, you probably can't, is the short answer. The long answer is that if it violates their terms of service and you can find somebody home at Google to report it to, you might be able to get them taken down, but for the most part, it's a waste of effort. And I suppose, there are other more sophisticated techniques you could use, but most of them are low yield. And so just put your head down, do a good business, ask for good reviews, and don't worry too much about the occasional fake one, or from a customer that didn't do any business with you, but you managed to offend.
But if somebody, Mike, really, really, really wants to address it, what would you recommend?
So if they really, really want to address it, and it really, really is spam, then you need to spend the time to categorize the nature of the spam attack in great detail and report it either via the forum or via the contact form at Google. And then if you do it by the contact form and they don't respond, then come into the forum, let the product experts at the Google forum look at it, and perhaps they can get it escalated and looked at. But Google, for the most part, just doesn't really take down many reviews.
Silence means you, Andrew. You're muted. Yeah.
So the first question people ask is, does Chrome really quit when you hit quit and log you out? And yes, it does. So I think the thing we hear a lot these days is, why is Google showing the wrong information for my business in a query? So like an example of this would be, let's say you're an auto dealer and you have a dealer showroom and you have a service department, which are two separate businesses, related but separate. They each have their own Google My Business page. And what you'll see is Google showing the service business for someone searching for the dealership, let's say. And this thing we've seen been happening over the last several months across all sorts of industries. And the short answer to this is that Google My Business has been going through a lot of, I guess what we call them upheaval over the last 6 months. And the COVID crisis also, I think, took people's eyes off the ball a little bit in focusing on doing things that were COVID specific versus fixing problems like this. And so these are problems you can try to escalate to Google My Business support, but they're really kind of system-wide things that Google needs to fix. So pretty challenging stuff.
So you're saying just be very zen about it, accepting?
Yeah, zen.
Exactly.
My standard saying is drink 2 beers and come back next week. But with COVID and the cock up at Google's these last couple of months, it's been changed to get a case of beer and come back next month.
Yeah, and some Xanax.
All right. So we already have a question about review responses impacting rankings. The verbatim question is, do review responses in GMB affect word cloud and by extension improve ranking on those keywords?
No.
Yeah, I'd say no.
Okay. All right. Unless you want to say something different, Andrew, we're moving on.
Do I need to say anything? I mean, it seems pretty clear.
Okay. So Moz came out with a local SEO report pretty recently in the last couple of weeks. And it was pretty interesting. It was a survey about what local SEOs are paying attention to and valuing. And I'm going to read you the top 5 things that they said that they wished, it was kind of a wish list or a ranking of importance, things that they thought that they should spend more time on or wanted to spend more time on in order: local link building, content development, on-site optimization, technical analysis of ranking, traffic, and conversions, and website design. Are those the right things to be focused on?
They're all good, but if you had to pick 1 or 2, like, it's links all the way.
Yeah, I think there was a stat in that survey that was really kind of sad, but the percentage of people that are currently doing link building was like really low, which anecdotally I've seen a lot in the local search space. I feel like there's a lot of local SEO agencies that don't do link building mainly because their retainers aren't high enough to do link building, which is a problem. Like, it's hard to do link building cheaply. Like, it's almost impossible. But I would definitely say that, like, I agree, it would be number 1 for me as well, for most important.
Is it too self-serving if I say review should be number 2?
No, not at all.
You could say they should be number 2, Mike.
Review management didn't make the top 5 cut. It was number 6. But
right. I would say that the thing that is undervalued here, besides review management, is email. Right? I mean, I see email is still providing massive returns, and I believe that every campaign you do, whether it's Facebook or Google, whatever, you need to be moving people into your own sphere of influence so that you can reach out to them when you need to and have a direct relationship with it when you need to. I believe, like e-commerce builds resilience, email builds resilience, gives you a direct path to the customer, and should be at the top, very high on people's lists.
Well, so that would be a sort of general marketing advice, not local SEO ranking advice, correct?
Well, it's right, not about
indirectly.
Right, but this is what local marketers think they should be spending more time on.
Yes, correct.
I think they should be spending more time on making sure that their business, the businesses they deal with, have good relationships with their customers, and email is a critical part of that. So, how's that for responses?
No, very good. I misspoke there. So we've got some more questions coming in, and I want to get to them. But let's talk a moment about local link building, because that's a you know, I've seen a lot of local link building discussions, and people default to these sort of cliches. Local church groups, Little League, you know, blah, blah, blah. What are your recommendations around local link building? How do you do it?
I tell people to either hire Joy or Andrew.
That's how we
So So internally here, I hired a full-time, I guess, PR guy about a year ago, which was probably one of the best decisions I think I've made. He has connections, I guess, with different like writers and stuff at different publications. So they're often looking to quote small businesses or get, expert quotes, things like that. So it's kind of an easy way to get links. Because he's already got those relationships. But finding someone who has those relationships, finding the PR person is the hard part, and finding someone that works within your budget. Because I know PR firms in general are very expensive for the most part. So I had a client ask me like, can you recommend a PR firm that just does PR? And they're like $5 to $10 grand a month, based on the quotes he was getting. So I think if you're an agency, finding or learning how to do this stuff in-house is really critical. If you're a business, it's going to be hard unless you're fine with like contacting and doing lots and lots of outreach to newspapers and like other businesses in your area. It's time consuming.
Yeah, we actually don't do the PR stuff quite the same way. Although I like how Joy's doing it with actual PR. That's always good. So kind of more to Joy's second point, which is you have to do a ton of research to figure out what pages on the internet are likely to link to your site. You have to have a content strategy that's like, well, what do I have on my site that can earn a link? And then you have to do massive outreach to get full links. That means you have processes and automated systems. So as an example, our team, it's not uncommon for our team to send out thousands of emails a week to just get, 10 links or something like that. And so I think one of the—
So are you guys spamming my inbox asking for links on the various blogs I control?
Yeah, maybe. Although we change our persona, Mike, to fool you. One of the fallacies, I think, of local SEO is that people think you need local links, meaning the church group or whatever, to rank well. They're definitely good. Like, I would never say no to those, and those are usually the easier ones to get. But basically, you need relevant links, and for local, relevance could mean, hey, this is a page about my city that I want to rank in, or this is a page about the topic I want to rank for. And tends to be a lot more pages about the topic that are good targets than there are pages about local in the topic. And yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
What about things like local, local directories, local business roundups, merchant associations? Have you had any success with that kind of stuff?
Those are all good to get. They're just not reliable in any way, shape, or form. And so when you have to do links at scale, if you're doing it for more than one or two clients, you've got to figure out a way that's not like I have to get on the phone and call it Chamber of Commerce to get a link kind of thing. Sometimes we've seen some of our clients actually, if you tell them how to fish for a link, they're actually really good at getting them because they have these local connections and they can call up people and be like, hey, the guy with the restaurant down the block, maybe he can give me a link.
Okay, we've got a ton of, Joy, unless you wanted to add to that, I'm going to move on to some of the questions.
That's okay.
Yeah, in terms of the PR, $5,000 a month is the low end of the scale there, just to give people kind of context. And it's easy, you can go over 10,000 a month as well. Okay, so question, local city pages and how they impact rankings. I assume that this is sort of consistent with what we were just talking about. Or conversely, it could be, Amber can clarify, but conversely, it could be, should you build local city pages?
Yeah, I think they're asking, should you have local city pages for all the cities you want to do business in?
Probably so. That's probably right. Yeah, answer that question.
So I would say yes, but they work better in certain industries than others. So we've had some industries where location pages or service area pages get very little traffic, and some where they get an insane amount of traffic. So that's kind of been our experience, but I usually say it's worthwhile to try and create a few and see what happens. But they only impact organic. I'm not sure if they were referring to organic or local rankings, but I haven't seen city pages impact local or 3-pack rankings at all.
Right. Well, so give us a for instance, if you would, of categories where they've had an impact and others where it's not been successful.
Yeah, so our lawn care client, their service pages do amazing. Like we get so much traffic there. For personal injury lawyers, they get little traffic, but it's, I'd say, still worthwhile for smaller cities, because even if you get, one conversion every 6 months for a lawyer, that could be worth the effort. And one where it didn't work at all was a home security client of ours. It did nothing. Like there was absolutely no traffic.
Okay.
So what we typically see is, first of all, your landing page for a location, it has to be as real or as good a landing page. It has to be like a logical entry point into the site. We see a lot of people just spin up auto-generated pages that don't have, insert city name here, and that doesn't work. The cut and paste, insert city name here. Every time we've worked on one of those where we've updated the content, those pages have performed like 1 million times better. And don't, unless you have like a strong site SEO wise, I think I'd be wary of spinning up a ton of location plus service pages. For a client now that's a vendor for them to generate 16 location service pages for every location, and it's not performing because there's no. They do great for brand searches, but not for non-brand searches.
Right, and the majority of local searches are not brand searches, not direct searches, they're category searches.
For brand searches, it's actually not a bad strategy because presumably the landing page is a lot more targeted. Like, oh, I'm interested in lawn care, so I want to land on the local lawn care page versus the city page.
Okay, Joy, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just something that came to my mind. There's something we've noticed recently with the service area pages. I can't say I noticed this a year ago. Google's starting to surface them a lot more now for like near me terms or what we call implicit queries. So for example, if I just do lawn care and I don't specify an area, I get a service area page that is in a city close to me. So I think that I never used to see that back in the day. They'd usually only surface if you did like lawn care, Chicago, whatever. So that's another kind of thing I think why they're still working. Google's looking for those keywords or whatever, that local relevant content, even if you don't specify it in your search.
Are you seeing that? One quick question, Mike. Are you seeing that on the desktop and mobile or just mobile? Joy.
For the rankings or
no, the service area pages. Are you seeing that across the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you should address, Joy, whether you're seeing more conversions from implicit or geo-specific searches, because a lot of clients comment say, I want to rank for this phrase in this city. My sense is that that's probably ass backwards.
Yep. Yeah, I actually have an entire presentation that I've been working on about that exact topic. But yeah, you got to look at both, and depending on the industry, some get searched more than others. But I feel like people, in general, really focus on like, divorce lawyer Chicago, not just divorce lawyer. And we've seen tons of cases where conversions on divorce lawyer, for example, is higher and convert better than divorce lawyer Chicago. So different than what we used to think, 10 years ago.
Okay, I'm just going to launch into these. There's a whole bunch of questions. Any recommendations for competitive local niches like doctor in LA? Are there any specific strategies you would use for a very intense competitive segment like that?
Great PR, great content, great reviews, great website. Better than the competitors. It's hard. And you have to be top of game in all of those areas, not just one of them.
I would go for long tail keywords. A lot of times if you can't compete with the really, really specific term that everybody's going after, you can go after more long tail terms. So there's plenty of opportunities there.
Yeah, you can do a pretty easy research to see which mid and long tail terms are showing location pages versus national results, and that's a clue that those are gainable.
Although there are ways to trigger location pages that aren't currently showing them. Just reviews at Yelp in that topic will trigger a location page. It's not currently showing.
Okay, on the topic of reviews, somebody's saying that They're questioning the value of reviews as a ranking factor. I have 12 reviews. My competitor has 3 reviews, but they rank higher in the pack. It leads them to be skeptical of the impact of reviews.
Ranking isn't a linear relationship between any variable and any rank. It's a combination of factors, and we know that reviews contribute. Reviews tend to contribute more at lower numbers and then plateau, and then at another plateau contribute more again, but it's definitely not linear. We do see though that where they do significantly help is in relevance. So if you have a lot of reviews that cover a lot of different topics and somebody searches on those topics, then those reviews seem to help in those areas. So I would think of it more about reach than rank. In other words, a lot of reviews from diverse reviewers with real content gives you greater reach because Google understands that people like these aspects of your business. They mention them, etc. So it's like mid-tail and long-tail queries. Same thing happens with reviews.
Yeah, if I could go back in time like 10 minutes and answer the most common local SEO question, I think this is actually it. Is that guy has less reviews than I have. Why does he outrank me? And Mike's point is exactly the point. It's like, if that were all it is, sure, but it's 5,000 other things too.
What about review thresholds? Have you guys seen certain, I mean, Mike, you sort of alluded to this. Have you seen, below a certain number, you're not getting any juice, above a certain number, you start getting juice? Is there, I mean, the review acquisition and maintenance is a constant process, but what can you say, if anything, about that?
I mean, the last time I looked at that in depth was 2008 because it's irrelevant. It's like you need current reviews because that's what customers expect. Reviews is a long play. It's a 5-year, 10-year play. It's not about gazillion reviews right now. It's a slow, steady flow of reviews over time with a variety of topics. And so these thresholds become largely irrelevant in that context. I found thresholds at 10, and I think it was 100, 12 years ago when I looked, but it's like, who gives a shit? It's like, whatever the threshold is, you need reviews because this is how you get feedback from customers. They need to be done on an ongoing basis. It's optimal if you have more reviews than your competitor, but it's not required. And they just need to be coming in over the next 10 years. And just, it's like the rest of it is immaterial.
Okay, so let's Joey, unless you want to answer that. I see you smiling.
I'm good.
She smiled
Okay.
because I said the word shit, I think.
Wait,
I'm embarrassing her.
You've said that about 6 or 7 times, Mike, already. I'm looking for you to mix up your profanity a little bit more.
All right. Well, I can drop a few F-bombs really easily. Just let me know.
All right. Okay. So let's talk about review attributes. This is not a question, but this is relevant to the discussion. So, Mike, you've done a bunch of work on review attributes of late. Can you just sort of explain what they are? And is there any way to I hate to use any sort of term like solicit them, elicit them, game them. Is there any way that you can control them or influence them? You're on mute. That's the, Okay.
You told me to mute, so I muted.
No, I said, yeah. Go ahead.
So review attributes, for those that don't know, is a new feature in Google Reviews that applies to service industries, all service industries. They first rolled out in home services, HVAC, furnace repair, home inspection. But this spring, we don't know, roughly beginning of April, they started rolling out in dog training, daycare, dumpster rentals, hair salons, auto repair, windshield repair. And there's somewhere between 3 and 5 attributes, depending on the category you're in. And these are attributes like if you give a 4 or 5-star review, quality, value, professional, responsiveness on time. And if you give a 1 or 2-star review, they're negative values of those instead of positive ones. So they're very interesting to me because Google has a review problem, and the review problem is twofold. One is our research indicates almost 40% of all reviews are ratings only, which are pretty meaningless to future readers of the review. They're meaningless to Google because they don't have any context, and they're meaningless to the business. And we're seeing now that 60% of those ratings only are now including attributes, which is a huge change. And we're seeing that 60% of written reviews are including attributes. So all of a sudden, Google has a massive amount of data to be able to track about your company compared to others. So we'll allow them, a lot of businesses, as you pointed out, Greg, how do you decide between a bunch of lawyers that are all 4.5? Well, now you're going to have 4 or 5 new data points for consumers to be able to do that. And likewise, you're going to have data points for Google to be able to do it. And so I see these as a big deal that have sort of we've lost sight of them amidst all the other things that are going on in our world that are much more important. But this will become visible and important. In fact, an interesting sort of piece of my research that showed up in Australia, chiropractors are showing these. They're not here, which implies to me, veterinarians are showing them both places. It implies to me that Google's going to roll these out even more widely in the future to other professional services like physicians.
So is there anything that the business can do? It doesn't sound like there's anything the business can do.
Well, what we find is that when you introduce the customer in your email to the concepts that you want them to mention, they're more likely to mention them. So you can't manipulate it. But if you say, gee, we would love feedback from you to learn, what kind of value we provided, or if we're more professional, people start thinking that way, and they're more likely to select those.
Power of suggestion, then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, what we're also seeing is when they do select professional as an attribute, they often write professional in the review. So we're seeing the words from the attribute showing up in the written content more frequently.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything?
I am currently the world's expert on this topic.
Yes. Okay. So let me go to another. Oh, Mike just disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Google got him.
Okay. So question about Q&A. So any ranking impact on with Q&A, and anything else you want to say about Q&A?
It does not impact ranking. We have a blog post about this on SterlingSky's blog, so it outlines how we came to that conclusion. But yeah, not an impact on ranking. We usually add a few for clients, like ask a question, then put the answer in, and then upvote it so it shows in the knowledge panel, and then monitor it. That's about it.
It does show on intent-driven queries if there's a related question. So if you look for, say, engagement rings in Williamsville, I go to example, and there are Q&A about engagement rings, they will show up in the display very high on the page. So they act as a conversion, attribute rather than a ranking attribute. They're more like, those people can see other people ask questions about it and the business responded, and it shows up highly in the search result. So there's value from that point of view. I think there's also value from the point of view of making sure customers don't ask you the same question over and over again. Put it right there. Answer their questions. Why make life hard for them?
So a best practice is take your FAQs, put them into Q&A, answer them, and upvote them.
And upvote them, the best one.
And Nikki Mosier, I think, said you need 3 upvotes to be visible. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what it is now. Right.
Okay.
And you have to upvote both the question and the answers.
So people want to know. People are asking about spam. Why is there so much spam? Why does Google allow it to exist?
So
I would let me put it in context. Why has Google allowed it to exist since day one of Maps? Go ahead, Joyce. Sorry for interrupting.
All good. I don't think it's because Google likes spam. I know some people put on their tinfoil hats and say it's to drive money to Google ads, and I really don't believe that at all. I think it's just a resource problem. I think Google My Business is a free product, and whenever you have free products, you have limitations on the number of staff and the budget and whatever. So I just don't think that Google has devoted enough resources to tackling it. I also think the teams are too separated. There's the search team that actually runs the algorithm. That's where Danny Sullivan kind of is. And then the GMB team is over here, and they don't talk nearly as much as they should. I'll send stuff to Danny and he'll be like, you need to talk to GMB, and then vice versa. You ask GMB about search and they're like, you got to go talk to the search team. So I feel like those teams just really need to talk more.
And I would contend that if Google wanted to solve the problem, they could. That it's not just a lack of resources. They have plenty of resources They have chosen not to allocate those resources to major spam fighting areas. They have chosen because it's expensive. They've chosen because their statistics indicate it's some low percentage. What they don't get, and what seems to be the sort of intellectual disconnect, is that in certain markets, in certain spaces, it impacts people's real lives in very negative ways. Drug rehab is the obvious example, but it's everything from appliance repair on down. And I think they just don't want to look at the problem and devote resources to it because they'd rather spend their money otherwise.
It's a huge problem. It's like addressing systemic racism versus thinking there are a few bad apples, for example. Because once you sort of acknowledge the problem, then you have to do something about it, and it's a massive problem, I suspect.
Right. And all of their statistics they add up all the churches and all the car dealers and all the moving companies in the world. And when you add up and the parks and everything else, when you add all that up, there's a couple gazillion locations, and only 1/2 of 1% has spam. Well, yeah, okay, churches and parks don't have a lot of fake listings. I get it. But if that's your standard for measuring it, then you're going to not see it because you're not looking.
Okay.
Sorry for
No.
I didn't say the word shit or fuck in that once. And I should
Okay,
have.
there's the first one. All right.
Okay.
There's the first one. Ding, ding, ring the bell. So let's just definitively answer the geotagging question because it's come up again. So the question, should I geotag?
Tagging. No one cares.
No geotagging ever of images for any reason, right? No waste of time.
If you're going to spend time on your pictures, take great pictures of real people, upload them regularly.
Okay, all right.
The camera should just geotag it anyhow. So
it does geotag it.
Okay, so I've got two questions about services such as Yext. Okay, so there's two questions. One does Yext improve local SEO? Are local citation builders worth the investment for local businesses?
So
let's not hear from Mike on this.
All
Mike,
right.
you can talk next.
There's research on my blog from way back that Yext has impact.
No, it's fine. You can talk, but let's go to Andrew. Let's go to Andrew first on this.
So let's just say this: listings management services like Yext can improve your SEO, but that's not their primary reason to have them. It's not like there are a million other things you can do better to improve your SEO. Listings management services like Yext, et cetera, Uberall, et cetera, are all good to have if you have a lot of locations that you need to be able to manage on a regular basis, meaning, hey, COVID happened and we need to update the hours on 1,000 locations like within 24 hours. That's a really good reason to use one of those services. If you just have a single location and you're comfortable working in Google My Business and reaching out to like a couple of sites that maybe you think are important, like, I don't know, Yelp or yellowpages.com, like you can do that yourself. You don't need a listings management to do that.
Okay, anything to add, either of you?
Yeah, I would 100% agree. We don't personally use any service that has a reoccurring subscription. But I agree with Andrew, like if you have thousands of locations, it actually does make sense.
Except for PR, right? PR is a version of that.
Well, it's not reoccurring though. I'm not paying every year to keep the same link.
Oh, no, I'm making a joke. You're paying a PR person on a monthly basis, right?
Yes.
That's a subscription.
You're paying employees too, John, right?
Yeah, I do that.
That's a subscription. Okay, so you want to say that, Mike? You want to say the NAP citation thing?
Well, Google has changed dramatically over the last 9-10 years as to how they manage a listing. They used to reconstruct a listing from scratch every 6 weeks. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. So if you had NAP inconsistencies, you often would end up with a terrible listing.
And for those who don't know what NAP is, which is probably no one, name, address, and phone number.
Right. Subsequent to the use of the knowledge graph, where once a listing that's trusted is in there, that external data no longer or rarely will disrupt the basic data. it still can happen occasionally, as Andrew pointed out, and they pick up a weird data source on some sort of secondary piece of data. But for the most part, Google maintains their own data integrity. So net consistency only is important insofar as people can find your location. Like if they're looking on Bing and it's the wrong data and they go to the wrong place, that's a problem, but it's not a problem for Google rank. So, and that's one issue. Two is the idea that it has to be accurate down to the last period, abbreviation, whatever, is also false. Google's very good at normalizing whatever data they have. So NAB consistency has become a religion on which people have made companies, and it's a false god.
Okay, let's talk about situations where you've got a single address and you've got multiple practitioners like doctors in the same office, or dentists or lawyers who are essentially separate entities, but they're all at the same address. Any best practices there?
So we usually say to keep your categories as different as possible, if possible. So this is usually easy to do with medical practitioners, right? Like you've got one surgeon that focuses on this thing and then one that does something else. But that will keep them from competing. If you have a case where, let's say you have a law office with like 15 practitioner listings and they all do the same type of law, one thing that kind of works, and it works a little bit, so not like a ton, is you can change the landing page that you send each of the practitioner listings to hyper focus on a really long tail keyword, which we've done. I'm trying to think if that one's published yet. I think that's publishing on our blog in a week, the example of how we've been doing that. But it works a little bit. So if you're in a really competitive area, you may not, it may not be enough to bump you into the 3-pack, but that's one thing.
Andrew, you're on mute.
What's like an auto mute? See, we can't trust Google with your data or with your muting. All I was going to say is, slightly adding on to Joy's point, is you just need to decide whether you care if the practitioners are showing up above your brand. I know particularly lawyers seem to have a bit of an issue with that when some junior attorney is showing ahead of them. It has nothing to do with whether they're generating business and all to do with ego and brand positioning. So if you're going to go with practitioners, beware that could be the case.
And the other consideration is budget. It's more expensive to go with practitioners, but it may serve you, as Joy pointed out, particularly if there's distinctions between them.
Okay, here's a question. Oh, sorry. Go, Joy.
I was just going to piggyback off what Andrew said, because if that happens to you and you have a practitioner ranking instead of the brand, if it's a branded search, get rid of your brand name in the practitioner listing. That's like 90% of the time the problem. But if it's like, ranking for a non-branded term, one thing you could try is having Google My Business add what's called a relation to the listing. It's like a back-end thing, but they have a thing called a works at relation, where you can say this practitioner works at this office. So you can ask Google My Business to set that for you. You can also sometimes trigger it in the knowledge panel. If you click on the know this place, sometimes it'll ask you, does this person work in this building?
So I think I just heard a toilet flush in the background. So everybody please mute your mic if you're not one of the 3 speakers. I might not have, but it was vaguely similar to that sound. So related question, for industries like law, do you recommend a GMB page per profile per attorney, or just the law office itself?
So we only usually recommend creating practitioner listings if you've got a different category you want to target. So in a law office example, if you've got criminal lawyers and personal injury lawyers, then yeah, you would want to create a practitioner listing to target criminal, and then maybe use personal injury for the practice. But if that's not the case, then I wouldn't start creating them.
Although Google may create them for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's a sort of reverse question, if I can find it. I'm sort of jumping around here, and I may not be able to find it now. So I'm going to do it from memory, and if the person who asked it, if I get it wrong, ask it again. So this is somebody that's ranking for, is a service area business, I believe, that's ranking for local queries and wants to rank nationally, and they are wondering how to make that transition, and they're wondering, I think, if I remember, whether to remove location references from their landing pages. I probably didn't get that exactly right, but that you get the idea.
I think everything, so there's no one formula other than content and links. And so if you want to rank nationally, you need probably some content that's in the same ballpark as people who are ranking nationally, sites that are ranking nationally. And maybe having your city name, let's say, in your title tag is preventing that. You just need to test removing it and see if it's stronger without it. But I'm sure there's plenty. Actually, I can't think of one. I'm sure there's plenty, though, of local businesses that rank for national keywords.
There are, yeah, we have a couple clients that do. It's hard, let me tell you. Like, and it's not something that I would even expect to stay long term. I think we see more and more focus where Google is shifting organic results to be localized. So, you know, you search plumber, you get a plumber that is near the city you live in, not a plumber that's, you know, 50 miles away kind of thing. So if you manage to accomplish it, it's one of those things that I don't think it's a good long-term strategy.
It's actually a really, really good point that Joy just made is the way one of Google reps wants to describe a search result is as an auction where your bid are all the different factors that you bring to the table. And what you notice in a lot of local search results is that there are certain types of sites that fill them up in certain sections, like local directories are often showing right below the local pack, and they're kind of intermingled usually with local businesses or sometimes news sites. So you can be those are national sites ranking locally. You kind of have to decide if you want to rank nationally, you have to figure out, are you the right type of site to rank nationally?
So I want to talk, we're sort of closing in on the end of the session, but we can go a few minutes over if people are still interested. I want to talk about websites for a second because, you know, I mean, Mike, you've argued Google My Businesses or Google Business Profiles are the new homepage, and other people have argued that as well.
I don't argue that replaces your website, though.
Well, okay.
More nuanced argument than that.
All right. I apologize for mischaracterizing your argument, but a lot of people feel that way because of zero-click search and so on and so forth. What's the right level of investment in your website? Is there anything people should be doing differently today around SEO and their websites than they were doing in the past?
So let me give you my position clearly, and that is that while most conversions in many businesses, a lot of conversions occur on Google, but Google relies more heavily on your website than any other resource to inform their decision about you. So the website is the singular most important element you can provide to Google that they know about you and can rank for you and help you rank and understand what you do. And so from that point of view, the answer is have a great designed website that clearly articulates what you do, where you do it, and gives Google a lot of clues with internal links that show them the answers to those questions. And that will reinforce your Google My Business page adequately, where in many businesses, more conversions will occur there than on your website. But what difference does it make where they occur? But you need both.
Yeah, it's really outside of links, which we've discussed is painful, and maybe a little bit of time on your Google My Business page. It's really the only place to experiment with trying to rank for more things. And it's the easiest thing for you to manipulate. So website is hugely important.
Okay,
Huge.
so okay. Sorry, Joe, I cut you off. Anything?
No, I'm just agreeing with Andrew. It's huge. I wouldn't devalue it in any way. In fact, I'd probably spend more time and effort on your website in comparison to 10 years ago.
Okay, right. So that's the consensus here. You're hearing it here. More in time and investment. Build a better website.
But it also means you need to know, though, where your conversions are happening. And you do need to invest in conversion optimization of your GMB. Your pictures have to be great. Your reviews have to be fresh. The content has to be current. All that data that people are looking for needs to be there because your conversions are happening there. But
And don't flip your lid when for 3 months someone without a website is outranking you in Google My Business, which is another common question that we hear.
Real quickly on the Google website tool, the website builder that they have, that they offer for people who don't have websites. Is that worth doing? Do you get any advantages there? Real quick on that.
It's a single page website that is capable of ranking, but if you've got a real website, Google doesn't care if you got a real website or their single page site. They're going to look for your website. So if you can't afford a website, do Google single page site. It's better than just a Facebook page, is really the answer.
All right. So compressed, accelerated answers now as we sort of move into the final minutes here. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't get to. So say something about local services ads.
So they're expanding. They're in, I think, the UK, Canada, and the US. I think they're in the UK. But mostly for service providers, like home service providers still, but we are seeing that they're testing them with like lawyers and financial planners and some other industries. So there's a very big possibility that if you're in an industry in that realm, that this could eventually reach out to you. So just pay close attention. Google usually reaches out via email when they launch in a new market. But they are highly effective. Any clients of ours that have used them, tons of leads, really worthwhile in my opinion.
And they just added booking to the conversion tools.
That's sort of a Back to the Future thing, though, because the original version of it had that in there.
Had a form.
Had a form, and then they switched out.
Yeah.
And now it's coming back, so it's not new.
The knock we hear on them from some clients is that you pay the same for a low value lead as you do for a high value lead, and so. In the case I'm thinking of in movers where half the calls are piano moving, like it's not worth it. But you don't know if that's what's going to be the leads. So you have to be on top of measuring their effectiveness to really see if they work for you.
Okay, real quick on service area businesses, your best practices advice for reach, ranking, anything you want to say there?
Don't do it. Get a real business. Get some links, build some location landing pages, and consider getting an actual office space in the city you want to rank for.
Yeah.
You can find one, and the ROI is probably amazing.
Agreed. If it is a small office and it costs a few $100s a month or thousands, depends on where you are, right? But it can be worthwhile getting a physical office in the area that you actually serve.
Yeah. If spammers can do it with fake addresses, you can do it with a real office.
Okay, what's the biggest? A couple of fun questions here. What's the biggest mistake you guys made early in your local SEO careers?
Oh man, it was good. I don't know if it's just SEO. Let's just say SEO.
SEO.
Early on, I got hired by the New York Daily News to help them with some SEO. And they had there's this thing called duplicate subdomain in the SEO world. And they had a subdomain duplicating their entire website. I was like, you got to get rid of that. And they turned it off. And I didn't realize that all their images were hosted on that subdomain. And which, by the way, had 90% of all the links to their site. And they lost about 50% of their traffic overnight. That was a big mistake.
I think I broke a WordPress site early on by updating plugins. So I don't do that anymore. I leave that to the developers. But yeah, I think there's like little technical things that are easy to get wrong.
For me, it was not doing what Joy has done, which was surround myself with really a lot of smart people to do all the heavy lifting.
Okay, so what are, and again, we're in the last couple of minutes here, and I'll see if we can answer a couple more questions on the list. A compliment for Google and a criticism.
They have the best business listings in the world and the worst business listings in the world. They need to start paying attention to spam and not just give it lip service every time an article comes out in the Wall Street Journal.
Ooh, that's good. I would give them credit for so I'll do exactly what Mike did. I want to give them credit for launching so many new features related to COVID. Like they've been a lot more quick at coming out with new features. Usually it takes a long time. So I think that's great, but the negative would be they launched them so fast and there are so many bugs, so many issues with people not being able to like unmark their business as temporary closed and stuff because they launched so fast. Both a good and bad thing.
I'd say the thing I've been kind of impressed with is how they've added more features to Google Search Console that basically claim to be solving complicated technical SEO issues. So you kind of have maybe some more assurance that, hey, that problem that 5 years ago that I would have insisted someone fix, maybe they don't have to fix it because Google is kind of telling us that they're fixing it automatically. On the flip side, I don't believe that Google's fixing it automatically. They haven't proven that any of this stuff is reliable, and they've added a lot more confusion to interpreting the data in Search Console. So there you go. That's my 2 cents on that.
Okay, your most effective non-Google channel.
Email.
Did you both say email, Mike and Andrew?
No, I said email. He said webinar, I think, right?
Or search webinars.
All right. Joy?
There's a few directories that I think are still valuable. So Yelp, Home Advisor, there's lots of niche ones. So if you are in a niche that has some directories that rank really well in Google, they can be still a valuable source of traffic.
But I would add to Joy's thing that you need to measure that and know, right? It's where your business is coming from. If 25% of your business is coming from house, great. Invest 25% of your resources in house. But if 2% is coming from Yelp or house, don't invest 20%, right? Know where your conversions are coming from and reinvest appropriately.
Okay, this may seem simplistic, but how do you track that?
As best you can.
One tip I'll throw out there that actually came up recently on the local search forum is if you migrate to HTTPS and you forgot to update some of your citations, it's possible that they're logging as direct traffic in Google Analytics. I never honestly thought about that, but I was like, oh crap. And I went back and a few of our clients actually have that problem where their high value citations are listed still as HTTP. So I think that's worth like the 10 minutes it takes to update.
Call tracking works across the board, but it doesn't allow you to distinguish that easily between these directories. The directories themselves, I mean, Google and Yelp do provide metrics that, you know, to a large extent are bullshit, but at least they're consistent over time bullshit. So you can get some relative sense of whether they're working or
directional.
not. They're directionally accurate. So use what you have and ask your customers if all else fails.
Okay, anything you want to say about GMB Insights versus Google Analytics?
Oh man.
They measure different things.
So advice for this audience.
Fantasy, I think, is the things that they measure.
Well, some things you can't get anyplace else, like driving directions. So you got to take Google's word for it, right?
I just recently updated our article on Google My Business Insights on our blog. But a couple of things I've learned recently that I didn't know, search queries are not updated in real time. So if you're looking at search queries and you think that you're looking at the last 3 months when you're looking at 1 quarter, it is not the last 3 months. I don't know what date you're looking at, but it's at least 2 months old based on when we were looking at. So we're constantly finding out these new things, but Search Console is very different than GMB Insights. Very different. There's no way to answer that quickly.
Okay, and do they duplicate? Do you get duplicate data there at all?
No. Yeah, some overlap, but not as much as you think.
Okay.
But if you really want to understand it, you have to hire Joy. It's incredibly complicated.
And with Search Console, if you have a lot of data, you're just logging into Search Console, you're not getting an accurate picture. You need to use the API and to extract that data, and then maybe you're getting 90% perceived sampling rate is. Okay,
I'm gonna wind down because we could talk for another 30 minutes, and I'm sure that a lot of people here would appreciate that. Before we go to the final question, and I'm sorry for the people whose questions we didn't get to, if people want to talk to you or contact you or find you or follow you, where's the best place to do that?
So I'm super active on Twitter, so at Joanne Hawkins. And then anything we publish goes out in our newsletter, which is free. It's at sterlingsky.ca/newsletter.
M. Blumenthal at Twitter, but I prefer to get questions directly via email, mike@gatherup.com.
And at LocalSEOGuide on Twitter, Andrew at localseoguide.com, or just go to the website and hit the contact form.
Okay, so for a final question, what's your best piece of advice for local SEOs today, or some alternative comment that you'd like to make in conclusion?
Spend way more focus on the website and link building and way less going inside GMB and like adding every single little new feature. Still add it because it takes 5 minutes, but the problem I think is that people think those little features Google's adding impact where they rank, and 90% of the time they do not.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Joy. That's my advice. Listen to Joy.
No, you have to say your own thing, Andrew.
Well,
we can come back to you. We can come back to you if you can't think of anything.
No, I'm not going to change my answer. Come on. That's how you do SEO. Do SEO. If you want to do SEO, do what Joy just told you.
My answer is help the businesses you're dealing with and help yourself by thinking about these problems strategically and stop worrying about a magic bullet, right? You got to learn the technical stuff, but then you've got to implement it in a way that helps the business be a better business. The goal is to not just get more customers, but keep them. And I think local SEOs need to get into the game of strategy instead of burying themselves in endless gag me with a spoon tactics.
Biting the hand that feeds you.
Maybe.
Yeah, here's maybe a little enhancement of that is if you have to spend money on one thing, like you've got a website and you've got a GMB set up, and I'd probably put it more on links in the near term than I would on content, unfortunately. Because we see plenty of sites rank okay with almost nothing on their landing pages, and so in GMB. And so that suggests to us that content for GMB at least is not as critical as links and location.
There's a ton of stuff we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Google Posts. We didn't talk about content, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. We didn't talk about transactions on Google, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. We didn't get to everybody's questions, but it was great to have you. Lots of great advice. I'm sure everybody listening appreciated this. This will be replayed on Search Engine Land in its entirety, I believe, and also probably chopped up into little tasty bits and bytes over the coming weeks. And thank you all very much for staying an extra 10 minutes. Have a great rest of your day. Have a beer, a glass of wine.